We've got quite a program here, and I want to say a word about the format so that you can understand what we're doing here. We have a fixed a format. There won't be questions from the audience, but I think you'll be appreciative of the questions we have developed. We've only got a limited amount of time. We've got 5 candidates, so we're going to really try to have a good discussion. The format is this. Each candidate is going to have a minute for an opening statement, and then at the end, a closing statement. In addition, there'll be 6 initial questions, which each candidate will have 90 minutes to answer. We've got...
I'll take it.
I could feel the gulps around the room. Sorry about that. 90 seconds. We've got a skilled set of timekeepers here who've got signs indicating that it's time to begin to wrap up, it's time to wrap up, and then it's time to stop. And in case those signs are not seen, we've got a bright red light here to help with that. And then after each candidate answers that 90-second first question, we will have then a follow-up, and it'll be the same question for the whole panel. We're also going to alternate the order, which will create a little bit of a challenge for me, so bear with me. And I also want to take this opportunity, as Dean Schwartz said, to introduce to you and welcome our panel of questioners. These are graduate students who are specializing in urban policy. We've been meeting for about 5 or 6 weeks on these questions, so we feel pretty good about them, and I think you'll see why. And each of the first questions will be asked by one of our students. The pleasure to introduce Swato Abdi, who will ask the first 2 questions. Swato?
Thank you.
Your question should be to Mr. Schiff.
All right. Last May, the City Council approved
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Opening statements. I'm ready to jump in. I'm ready to go to our skilled questioners here. Apologies. Let's start with Mr. Andrew, opening statement.
Thank you very much. It's nice to see you're not utterly infallible. I always thought you were.
No, quite fallible.
It's maybe a little odd for me to be positioned on the far right of my colleagues, but I'll try to get used to it. My name is Mark Andrew. I'm running for mayor of the city of Minneapolis, and I am running because I love our city. I have a passion for our city. I was born in the city a few blocks from here. I was raised here. I raised my children here. I went to school here. I put my kids through public schools here. I have a deep, abiding, lifelong commitment to our city, and I am running for mayor because I think I can help move our city into the next phase of greatness. We are going to do that by accomplishing 3 things. First of all, Minneapolis is going to become the greenest city in North America. Number 2, we are going to develop tax policies, economic development policies that are good for business and good for kids. And thirdly, we're going to close the achievement gap. I'm Mark Andrew. I want to be your mayor.
Ms. Cherryhomes?
Good afternoon. I want to thank Mr. Jacobs and the Humphrey Institute for inviting us here today, and for all of you for taking time out of your day to join us. I'm Jackie Cherryhomes, and I'm running for mayor because I believe Minneapolis can be the city that works for everyone. With a vibrant and engaged citizenry, active partners in labor and business, and a can-do spirit, Minneapolis can be even stronger. I know our city's challenges, but more importantly, I see the opportunities. I will enlist all our partners and build a city that works for everyone. A city where value is delivered for the property taxes we pay, a city that is safe, a city with a vibrant economy, a city where everyone is welcomed and everyone is valued. I've lived in this city all my life. I love this city. I've done many things in this city. I've created affordable housing, I've created jobs, I've worked to make our city safer, and I've run the city's government. These experiences, I believe, make me the best candidate to be the next mayor, and I ask for your support.
Ms. Hodges?
Thank you. For many years, I've had the opportunity to talk to folks all across Minneapolis about their biggest vision for themselves, for their families, for their community. And what I've discovered is that we all pretty much want the same thing. We want a prosperous, unified city that works. And for the most part, in recent years, that's what people have been getting, and I'm very proud of the role that I've played in that. We've weathered tough times pretty well, and we are really well positioned to take advantage of this moment. I am running for mayor because I want everyone in Minneapolis to benefit from the opportunities in front of us. I am a leader with the experience who can unify people and who can unify Minneapolis around a strong progressive agenda that creates jobs, that makes sure our kids are thriving, that keeps our families safe, and makes Minneapolis the great city of the 21st century.
Mr. Samuels?
Thank you. And thank you, Professor, and the Humphrey Institute. Your leadership in being the first forum is consistent with your academic and intellectual leadership of this community. I'm an immigrant of 43 years. I arrived at age 20 in New York with $83 in my pocket. And 43 years later, here I am asking you to consider me as mayor of one of the greatest cities in the country. On the way, I've been corporate executive for a Fortune 500 company. I've been my own small business owner, and the last 10 years, I've been a council member in North Minneapolis. My wife and I moved into the most challenged community in the city for the purpose of reversing the brain drain, because we see a bright future for our city, and I want to share that vision with you and ask you for your support. Thank you.
Mr. Schiff?
My name's Gary Schiff, and I'm running for mayor because I believe in the most progressive city in America, every neighborhood should make progress. I love our city. I love our diverse neighborhoods. I love our arts economy. I love great places to bike and a local culture that supports locally owned small businesses. I was raised in a middle-class family, the youngest of 6 kids. I learned the values of hard work, education, and a responsibility that we all have to help others. I'm a product of the public schools and a proud graduate of this university. For the last 12 years, I've been a consistent progressive voice and a leader on the Minneapolis City Council. But our future has many challenges. As our economy grows, we must make sure that every child has the opportunity to achieve their full potential. I will make sure that city jobs are given to people who live in the city of Minneapolis, and that we put people to work on city projects who live here. I will advance a plan to disrupt the cycle of poverty and make sure that every child has a chance. Thank you.
First question is to Mr. Schiff. Swato Abdi.
Thank you. Last May, the City Council approved legislation that commits Minneapolis to pay $150 million in construction costs for the new Viking Stadium and $159 million in operation costs down the road. After interest, the total bill to Minneapolis residents will be $675 million. Do you think Minneapolis should follow through with this commitment?
You know what I think, because I've been a consistent progressive voice for our values on the City Council. Nobody fought harder against this deal that takes money out of the hands of working class people and gives it to a billionaire team owner. This deal is not coming to fruition right now because the financing isn't working. The next legislative session, our state will have the opportunity to fix the mistake of the last legislative session. We'll have the opportunity to elect a mayor this November who will speak up for the taxpayers of Minneapolis and make sure that Minneapolis gets a better deal, to make sure that we find more progressive ways of funding a stadium. This is the Minnesota Vikings, not the Minneapolis Vikings. We're the only metropolitan area in the country that is paying for 3 sports facilities for separate use professional teams. We need a regional solution. I will work with Mayor Coleman in St. Paul to come up with a sustainable way that has the state and the metro area chipping in together to pay for these facilities. And I will make sure that city workers, city residents get the jobs on this project. If the city is paying the bill, it's our residents who should be put to work.
Mr. Samuels?
Thank you. When I first was introduced to the prospect of the stadium, it was clear that a stadium was going to be built. The state was going to pass a bill to build this stadium. Minneapolis was going to get run over or get on board. And so I chose the opportunity to join the mayor and the majority of the council to make sure that we as a city would benefit at a maximum capacity for the stadium's presence in our city. That we would get the jobs and the benefits for the building of this $1 billion facility. And it was from the very beginning for me, in the greatest recession outside of the Great Depression, that we create jobs and that this was the best opportunity for the creation of the employment of the 1 in 4 union workers who were sitting on the bench and the incredible unemployment rate in my community. That's why I supported the stadium. I also supported it because it gives incredible tax relief, $5 million in tax relief to our citizens each year. And so I have no regrets about this. The county spends close to $300 million paying for unemployment, the outcomes of unemployment and disenfranchisement in Hennepin County. Multiply that by 3, that's $600 million. Let's pay for people to get back to work.
Ms. Hodges?
Thank you. There were 3 reasons I opposed the stadium bill so strenuously. The first is for 15 years I've been against public funding for sports facilities. The opportunity costs are huge. Imagine if we took $1 billion and invested that in education and our kids. Imagine if we took $1 billion and invested that in our small business economy. What that would do for the state of Minnesota and the city of Minneapolis is huge. The next reason I opposed it is because I thought the deal was a bad one. The city side of the financing is pretty strong. The state side of the financing is not. I felt a little bit like Cassandra from the dais when I was questioning whether the revenues would actually come in from the state side, and now we are seeing that that is a challenge. My fear is that somewhere down the road they're going to come knocking on the city's door to say, we need you to kick in more to save the Vikings and save the stadium. When I'm mayor, the answer to that question will be no. The third reason I oppose it is because we have a charter in Minneapolis that says if you're going to spend more than $10 million on a sports facility, you have to ask the people if they want to spend more than $10 million on a sports facility. That referendum did not happen. When it became clear that this stadium was moving forward, I became the only opponent on the Stadium Implementation Committee to make sure that this happens as well as possible. And I'm fighting for the jobs and the community from that committee.
Mr. Andrew?
Thank you. Look, there's a whole lot to not like about the stadium deal that got put together. I was against the location of it. I was passionately against the financing they put together for it. The gaming and gambling piece of it being introduced into the equation was wrong-headed from the start. I don't support legalized gambling anyway, but this was an unreliable and risky gambit to be inserted into that bill. And the thing that probably bothers me most about the financing package is that Minneapolis residents are paying twice. We pay the state share and we're paying the city share. That is unfair. Having said that, and I also would have supported the referendum. I think we could have made a case. But as mayor, it would be lunacy to advocate presiding over a hole in the ground. That stadium is going to be a jobs machine. It's going to create several thousand jobs. It is utterly inconsistent for anybody running for mayor to say they're in favor of job creation and then say they're against stadiums because they don't want to subsidize a billionaire. It's utterly inconsistent. I am a builder. I supported the Twins ballpark. I was responsible for greening the Twins ballpark. I am in favor of a stadium solution, but we have to go back and redo the financing aspects of it to make it more fair for Minneapolis.
Follow-up question to you, Mr. Schiff. First, what is your... Oh, I'm sorry. Miss Cherryhomes, with apologies.
Maybe you already knew what my answer was going to be. I don't know.
No doubt.
I am a supporter of the Viking Stadium. I did not support it in this location. I actively worked for it to be over at the Royalston area. I thought that was a better location for the stadium. I thought there you would have more synergy with the Twins and with the Target Center, and I thought then you'd have more of a sports venue in that vicinity. Didn't work out. I would agree with my opponent here, Mr. Andrews. I do not support public gaming. I did not support public gaming as the financing tool for this, but I wasn't in a position where I was making those decisions. The fact of the matter is the building of the Viking Stadium is a jobs creator and a jobs tool. It is a jobs generator for the residents of the community that I live in North Minneapolis, and the commitment there is to hire 33% of the people on the job being women or people of color. That's extraordinary. That's something that's never happened before in a public venue in our state. I think that's something that we're going to be very proud of. It also was an opportunity to put our brothers and sisters in labor back to work again. It was a bad recession. People were out of work. This was an opportunity to create jobs, meaningful jobs, good employment jobs, and an opportunity to put people to work. So I support the stadium. I think it's an investment in our future. And I would agree, there's no way that you can say that you're going to preside over nothing happen when you're the mayor. If it started and it's begun, then we need to make it be the best it possibly can be.
Mr. Schiff, follow-up question. What is your distinctive and important proven skill that would ensure that Minneapolis would get the best deal possible on the Viking Stadium or other important initiatives?
My skill is my experience in advocating for jobs for people who live in my community. When Children's Hospital asked for city financing to expand their campus on Chicago Avenue, I slowed down the bonding request until we had a signed contract with Children's Hospital that they would give jobs through the construction process to people who lived in the zip codes around the project. Zip code hiring is a very crucial way that we have to make sure when we sign contracts with developers using city tax dollars that we make sure that people who live in Minneapolis are benefiting from the project. Number two, I've been a coalition builder. The referendum requirement was authored by myself and other activists in 1997. It was a charter amendment that I helped co-author, and it was passed by the city residents of Minneapolis. And that was bringing together people from across the city to ask for transparency and accountability with these types of large corporate welfare projects. We should be investing in small businesses and demand accountability over the use of our tax dollars. And that's the kind of outspoken voice that I'll be as mayor.
Mr. Samuels?
As a signatory to the city's agreement for the stadium, I made a condition of my cooperation that the state lives up to the city's levels of participation by minorities and women, 32% minority. This is an unprecedented number, and I put it in black and white in the agreement from the beginning, and I fully intend to oversee the implementation of that. Now, we've had numbers on paper for a long time, but during my tenure at the council, we've seen the highest participation rates of projects, and especially in my ward, in the 5th Ward, there have been unprecedented participation by minorities because I've made sure that that promise was kept. I will continue that work so that the people in Minneapolis, in the zip codes that are disenfranchised, and that the people of Minneapolis benefit. That's why I signed on, and I'm going to see it through.
Ms. Hodges?
Thank you. I figure there's a couple skills you need when you're the mayor of Minneapolis. One of them is you have to be able to build strong relationships. Given the way our government functions, most things that we do at the city require relationships with other governments, nonprofits, the business sector. And that's something I've proven I can do. Being on the implementation committee, the only opponent, I've already worked with folks on the committee to make sure that we have good jobs not only while we're building the stadium, but that we have encouragement to make sure that we have good ongoing jobs in and around the stadium after it's built. That takes relationships to get those agreements among that set of folks. The other skill you need is you have to know how to take on a tough fight and win. I've done that too. We can talk about pensions if you want to. I could talk about it all day. But taking on the closed pension funds and winning was one of the biggest moments in my career on city council. You also need to know when to do each one of those. That judgment I have.
Ms. Cherryhomes?
One of the skills that I bring to the issue is knowing how to create jobs. It's something I've done in both my personal and professional life for a long time. Working with organizations like Summit Academy, the Network for Better Futures, the Urban League, I know how jobs are created and I know how to do it and I have the relationships to get it done. Secondly, I am not afraid to make tough decisions. I have made tough decisions all my life. I have made tough decisions in public service. I have made tough decisions in my private business. I'm not afraid to make them. I know how to make them, and I know how to make tough decisions that result in good choices and good outcomes. I have relationships across the business community. I have relationships across the residential community. I have relationships with the job creators. I have relationships throughout the city of Minneapolis. Those are the relationships that are going to be necessary to be brought to bear to help the stadium be successful as it moves into the future.
Mr. Andrew.
The mayor has to possess 3 essential qualities. This is the job of the mayor of a modern city. Number 1, the mayor has to be bold and willing to step out and go beyond pilot projects and lay out comprehensive, holistic programs. 2, the mayor has to be a collaborator in the extreme. Think about the platform of the mayor's office. It's a weak mayor system, but you can be a really strong mayor because the mayor's platform is a convening platform. And as we struggle to deal with the problems with the stadium, I have the experience to put together and collaborate with the people who are going to make the decisions. I understand the issue. I have a marketing company, a green marketing company that's had extensive experience in sports facilities, and I have the vision to develop the property around the stadium, from the stadium down to the river to drive additional tax base.
Ms. Abdi has a question. We'll begin with Ms. Cherryhomes.
In the mayor's 11th State of the City address at the Capri Theater in North Minneapolis last April, Mayor Rybak said, "To grow Minneapolis, we should focus on the north side. Please identify one concrete initiative that you would make a top priority as mayor to grow jobs, improve public safety, or reduce poverty in the north side."
Well, I'm glad that the mayor did say that North Minneapolis was the priority. That's my home. That's where I live. That's where my husband's family lives. It's the part of the city that I think we really need to focus on in a very deep way. But first of all, what we need to do is not decide what is best for North Minneapolis. We need to engage with the people of North Minneapolis. We need to listen. We need to talk to them. We need to not come with some top-down solution about this is what we think is going to work here. We have bright, engaged citizens in North Minneapolis, and they need to be part of the solution. We have good initiatives going on in crime prevention, but we need to strengthen those. We need to build stronger relationships between the police and the community. We have interesting and innovative ideas going on about creating jobs in our community. We need to bring manufacturing back. We need to have jobs available for people. We need to look at what jobs are available, and we need to match them up with the people in the community. We have a workforce ready, willing, and able to work. But the city needs to be the one that convenes that discussion, that gets those businesses to come and look at North Minneapolis as a place to do business. That's not happening right now. And in the area of housing, we need people to listen to what we want to do in North Minneapolis. We have foreclosed properties, we have vacant properties, we have a ton of opportunity, but instead someone decided that we need 100 green homes. We don't need 100 new green homes. We need to fix the homes that we have and house the people in our community that are looking for housing right now.
Mr. Samuels?
Thank you. North Minneapolis is a very complicated community. The roots of his problem lie in the flight of the middle class. So the number one thing that will solve the problems in North Minneapolis is the return of the middle class to diversify the economic and social environment of the community. Now, does the mayor have anything to do with that? This one will, because that's what my wife and I did. We took ourselves up based on our philosophical understanding of that reality. We put our bodies into it and became leaders on the ground for the transformation of the community. The community needs a spiritual transformation, a transformation of the heart, a different perception of people, children who need our support and are the vital resource for the future. That's the heart that's going to really change our community in a sustainable way. In a practical way, we have to make sure we fix the education conundrum. When we're graduating kids in the 30%, that's not acceptable. It's not sustainable. And then we need to get jobs, but we need to make it safe so that jobs will come. I can tell you over my tenure, I've seen jobs thought of coming and left. So we need to make the community safe, totally safe. So an old lady can walk to church, a manufacturer will come in. It's a multidimensional issue. I understand the scope of it, and I can lead the transformation of it.
Mr. Schiff?
My friend Jackie Cherryhomes said it very well. Grassroots planning starts at a neighborhood level. As somebody who has an urban planning background, I understand that North Minneapolis is not a blank canvas that the mayor is just going to put ideas onto. This has to be work with the community and building coalitions. We have a great plan for Above the Falls Master Plan that needs to be implemented to connect North Side with our natural heritage, the Mississippi River. Number two, we have to give jobs to the people who live in North Minneapolis. With all the talk on stadiums, the city actually spends $80 million a year in capital infrastructure projects. Those contracts go to companies across the metro area. And I think when they get contracts with city tax dollars, they should be required to give some of those jobs to city residents. The next thing we need to do is make sure it's easier for small businesses. I've had great meals in North Minneapolis in the last several months, talking to business owners who are struggling with complicated city bureaucracies. If we want small businesses to succeed, we must start a comprehensive overhaul of city regulations that haven't been reviewed since 1963. And last, it's about the kids. We have to make sure that we forward a strong, bold plan that works the county, the schools, and the city together on a plan to disrupt the cycle of poverty that keeps our children from achieving their full potential. And as mayor, I will convene that, and I will make sure it's a transparent report card showing what government's doing right and what we need to do better.
Ms. Hodges?
Even before I was on the city council, I was finding ways for folks in my community in southwest Minneapolis to be genuine allies to the North Side. Not to give a song for someone else to sing, but to lend our voices to the song that was already being sung. I organized my neighbors. We've done a lot of good work together, and I think we've helped move the ball forward in having our part of the city know that the vitality of the North Side is important to the entire city and to everybody in it. If we're going to help revitalize the North Side, if we're going to help do that work, the first thing we need to do is put opportunities where opportunity is needed most. We need to create jobs in North Minneapolis for people from North Minneapolis. I know that the Minnesota Chamber is already working with the philanthropic community to create a program to incent businesses to go to the North Side, and I support that wholeheartedly, and as mayor will be a partner in doing that. The transit that is going to North Minneapolis will also be crucial. to connect people to one another, to the rest of the city, but also to jobs that are elsewhere, to get better connections to the opportunities that are available. Family stability will be important, making sure that the wealth and assets of the community remain in the community, advocating for better laws regarding predatory lending. Payday loans is leaking the wealth and assets from our community. That's what I will do as mayor.
Mr. Andrew.
Thank you. Actually, North Minneapolis is a clean canvas. The mayor has the brush, the community paints the picture, and here's what it ought to look like. North Minneapolis today is a city in great pain, in part because of the Great Recession, in part because of the tornadoes, in part because of a lack of action taken by the city over a very, very long period of time. Here's the reality in North Minneapolis. We first have to invite private business to come in and help us solve the problem. Everyone here is talking about jobs. Nobody has determined how that is actually going to happen. My very first month as mayor, I've already made this commitment publicly, we will have a blue ribbon task force, time limited, 6 months. It's going to be made up of corporate interests, community interests, neighbors, families, maybe even a kid. And we're going to devise a strategy to attract a company to come in, maybe light manufacturing, to help jumpstart this process with a couple hundred livable wage jobs. The next thing we're going to do is take my strategy, which nobody has talked about, that is going to work, which is a greening strategy where we create an environment within which positive development can actually occur. Developers want to develop where there's green space and water and amenities, and that will be a driving economic development tool.
As a group and individually, you've talked about a number of changes: jobs, public safety, transit, education initiatives to improve schools. How will you pay for these things? Ms. Cherryhomes.
Well, not everything has to cost money. First of all, improving our block club and police community relationships is a matter of strategy and a matter of reorganizing how we do things. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to creating jobs and bringing industry to the community, we're already doing it. I appreciate people's interest, but as volunteers in the community, Bill English, myself, and some other people connected with the University of Minnesota with the Carlson Institute. We are working now as volunteers in an effort to identify 3 major businesses, and we've identified 3 businesses, and studies are being done about what it takes from a business plan perspective to bring those businesses to the community. What are their land needs, what are their capital needs, and what will it cost for them to bring jobs to the community. This is already happening. This is underway right now. It's not a costly matter. It's a matter of some of us just coming together and saying, how do we do it? And we're taking it one step further. Now we're talking about how do you connect the parents of children in the public schools to those job opportunities. So it's a holistic approach to creating jobs. It's happening right now. It's not costing anybody a penny, and we're ready to get to work.
Mr. Samuels.
One good example is the North Side Achievement Zone, which runs from Broadway to 36 from Penn to the river. When neighbors get together and decide that they're ready for change and that they're ready for dramatic quantum change and they're ready to put themselves into it, the resources come. And that's why the Northside Achievement Zone got $28.5 million for 5 years for its initiative that was taken before the promised neighborhood was even a concept. I believe that is what we really need to do now. We need to begin to step out together and say, status quo is not good enough. Every child can learn. Every adult can work. Every community should be safe and prosperous. We'll implement plans to make it happen as if it will, and the money will come because businesses and government like to support initiatives that are for real, by for real, honest, ethical people who know what they're doing.
Mr. Schiff.
On the city council for the last 12 years, I've represented a ward with modest means. My ward is 50% people of color, 50% renters, and 1 out of 3 children grow up in poverty. In that environment, I know that property taxes tax people out of their homes. When the property tax bill goes up 8% year after year after year, it makes a difference to the family that can't find steady work or a family hard hit by health care bills. So I've been working with my colleagues to cut the increases in property taxes, and just yesterday, Councilmember Hodges and I found $7 million of unspent department resources from 2012 and put it into a fund so that in 2014, property taxes don't have to increase at all. I've done the work of cutting higher property tax increases on the City Council because there's still too much government waste in City Hall. And also, when we create jobs, we don't have to do it with subsidies. An entrepreneur came to me 3 years ago and said, "Why can't I make beer in Minneapolis?" By gutting rules that have been on the books since Prohibition, we now have 7 microbreweries, 2 more on the way, no subsidies, just suds.
Ms. Hodges?
A minute for money, Larry?
It's not the only minute.
Good. I've been chair of our budget committee for the last 3 years. I know the budget inside out. And I've been representing folks who we get the highest volumes of calls about property taxes. I know what it is to balance tough choices about money with our need for service and our need to grow the city. So there's a few things we need to do. We need to fight hard for the relationship we have with the state on our fiscal relationship there. LGA, which is something I've been fighting for as League of Minnesota Cities president, as chair of our government committee. We need to make sure that we're growing our property tax base, which can ease the burden on all families and all property owners in the city. And most of all, we need to build relationships. If these tough times have taught us anything, it's that government is no longer able to do everything it once did alone. We have done extraordinary work in partnership with the Youth Violence Prevention Program, with Heading Home Hennepin, and those partnerships make cost-effective anything else we want to do in the city.
Mr. Andrew?
When I was on the Hennepin County Board, I led the coalition to create the Midtown Greenway. And a lot of people who know me as an environmentalist thought that I was doing the Midtown Greenway as an environmental program, but it was a tax-based program. The city has been slow on the uptake for a long time to become more innovative in how it runs its programs. Property taxes have doubled. They not only have to be held, they have to go down. The way to do that is through innovation. And here's what we did with the Greenway. When other people were looking at the Midtown trench, they were seeing whiskey bottles and syringes and vagrants and crime. I looked at it and I saw a park, and I saw an opportunity to build tax base. By putting a coalition together with the park board, the community, the city, and Hennepin County leading the charge, we developed the Greenway for several $million, and today there are hundreds of millions of dollars of private investment on the Greenway. That's the solution to North Minneapolis. It's the solution to infill here, and it's the solution that we're going to lead with as we try to rebuild our tax base for the future.
Next question is from Ronan Snowden, and it's for Ms. Hodges.
According to the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, the Section 8 waitlist in Minneapolis currently has 10,000 names. No one has been placed in a unit from the waiting list in 5 years. What should the city do to increase the number of affordable housing units for low-income residents?
One of the things I fought very hard for at the city is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It's money that we set aside that we use to invest in affordable housing. We need to make sure to keep that investment. The pressure year after year has been to cut and cut. But that's the last thing we need to do in an environment where we need folks at all income levels to be in the city and investing in the city. The other thing we need to do is make sure that we're doing everything we can to elevate the prospects for everybody in the city. Our work with Hennepin County on the Heading Home Hennepin initiative to end homelessness has been all-encompassing, bringing everybody together to create more housing, to give services to the folks who need them in that housing, to get people off the street and into jobs. It's been extraordinarily successful. Every time we have a report back at the city about the results of Heading Home Hennepin, we all just kind of shake our heads at what's possible when people work together on behalf of the city of Minneapolis and the residents who need us most. That's the sort of work that we need to do to bring in more affordable housing. The other thing we need to do is make sure we're developing along our transit lines. There's a huge opportunity to bring investment to the city and housing at all levels so folks can have access to their transit lines, they can get to their jobs, they can get to see their families, they can get where they need to go. There's a lot of room here. There's a lot of room here to do good things for good people, and that's what I will do as mayor.
Mr. Schiff?
I grew up in a family of faith that taught me that helping other people was just what you did. And I spent a lot of my childhood volunteering in homeless shelters, cleaning dishes, because when you're 4 feet tall, that's about all you're skilled for. But over the years, I got to participate on the City-County Task Force to End Homelessness as a representative of the city and to be co-chair with Hennepin County Commissioner Gail Dorfman. I got to be an author of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and I worked for AON, which builds quality affordable housing in our community. First thing we need to do is to restore the Public Housing Authority levy that was eliminated by the City Council a few years ago. Without the resources, our public housing quality will continue to deteriorate, and we must maintain the existing affordable housing we have to make sure that every house is affordable and safe for children. Number two, we have to make sure that we are continuing our efforts to reduce homelessness with partnerships. Our affordable housing, our homeless population has doubled in the last decade, and we need to do more to get people out of long-term homelessness and to focus our affordable housing dollars, not on the middle class, but to focus it on getting people out of poverty and making sure that we are working with nonprofits to build affordable housing at all levels. In just the past year, there's been a lot of affordable housing built in my ward through my partnerships, including affordable housing for seniors with memory care units at 38th Street, affordable housing for American Indian elders on Bloomington Avenue, new affordable housing for gay, lesbian, and bisexual transgender seniors on Lake Street. These are the projects that we need to focus our resources on as the senior population will double in the next 20 years. I think long-term, I think about sustainability, and we have to think about affordability.
Mr. Samuels?
The city has done a lot through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and Heading Home Hennepin, which we have collaborated with Hennepin County, and the homeless crisis kind of continues. We've done great work with the Downtown 100 to decriminalize homeless people who are chronic and have problems. As mayor, I would continue those efforts and double down. We are working on, and I'm leading the development of streetcars for certainly West Broadway, Central Avenue, to make sure that we have strong transit corridors where affordable housing built in density along these routes, including the BRT routes, being looked at by the city, by the Met Council, to make sure that people don't just have a place to live, but they have the transit to get to jobs. But let me say that if we keep solving the problem this late in the lives of our neighbors, we'll have a perpetual homeless and affordable housing crisis. We must begin to educate our children, to educate our workforce, so that our people will no longer need us, that they'll be living independently the American dream.
Mr. Andrew?
The affordable housing question has been a difficult and at times even a profound problem in our community. When I was on the Hennepin County Board of Commissioners, I was the originator and the creator of the City-County Homeless Task Force, which is now Heading Home Hennepin. I was very proud. It was one of the linchpins of my 16-year career on the Hennepin County Board, and I was recognized widely as an activist for the homeless. When Commissioner Gail Dorfman took my place on the county board, she has admirably continued that push. What we tried to do then, and what we need to do now, is create a continuum of services so that what we have today goes from being homeless on the street into a shelter, into supportive living, then next to job training, and then gradually weaning off public programs and getting into available, affordable housing. Each step along the way is complicated, and each step along the way has challenges. But the answer to the affordable housing question has to be a combination of solutions with the faith community, the city, the county, corporate America, and then our supported social services that are going to help people conquer their personal demons so that they can become self-sufficient and get back into the flow of life.
Ms. Cherryhomes?
I'm going to circle back to the question a little more specifically, I think. First of all, the question was about the waiting list for Section 8 at the MPHA, the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority. First of all, let me recognize that the MPHA is one of the leaders in our country. We have a hidden gem in Minneapolis. The MPHA is one of the highest performing public housing authorities in the country. We should celebrate them and we should work with them. I am the only person on this panel that actually has specific experience at creating housing. I have developed personally, in my role in North Minneapolis, 120 units of housing for people. I know what it takes to develop family housing in the environment that we live in. The problem, I think, in Minneapolis right now is we don't have an overall strategy for housing for the city. Everything is based on funding, not based on a strategic approach. We need to restore the MPHA housing levy. That $850,000 that was taken from the MPHA's budget, which would have gone to house poor people, went to provide tax relief for citizens in our city. Our budget needs to reflect our priorities. If our priority is to provide tax relief, that's one thing, but let's not lie about it then and pretend we're also creating housing for people. We're not doing both. We have a shortage in affordable housing, and the Public Housing Authority needs assistance in figuring out how to house those people that are on its waiting list. Not just homeless housing. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about families. We're talking about women and kids who need housing. We need to be supportive of the Public Housing Authority in doing that. They need to be our partner, and we need to work with them.
The 1995 Holman consent decree directed the city of Minneapolis to stop segregating affordable housing in low-income minority neighborhoods. What specific parts of the city would you be looking to build affordable housing? Let's start with Ms. Hodges.
Mine. I was president of the Linden Hills Neighborhood Council when we passed the first affordable housing policy of any neighborhood in the city. Because I and my neighbors recognized that to solve the problem, you have to make sure that housing is everywhere. And we put our policy and our money where our mouth was. We did actually create public housing in our neighborhood. We have Section 8. We encouraged landlords to bring Section 8 housing into the neighborhood successfully. And so the answer to the question of where should it go? Everywhere, including my neighborhood.
Mr. Schiff?
I've partnered with affordable housing providers in my ward. When Claire Housing called me up and said, do you know any land available for our federal housing with people with AIDS dollars so we can take people out of the shelters and put them in stable living, I said yes, on my block. And I worked with them to buy land from Minnesota Department of Transportation, and now Claire Housing has a great project on 23rd Avenue and 31st Street. We need a mayor who works with developers to find the affordable land to keep the housing costs down and to make sure that the city is thinking long-term along transit corridors, along commercial corridors where density makes sense. We can't take affordable housing and put it in the middle of a single-family neighborhood and isolate people from the transit and the connections they need to survive. We have to make sure that it's well thought out, well planned communities for success. So I'm proud that there's new affordable housing for people with disabilities and seniors being built at Lake Street, next to Hiawatha on the light rail station in my district, and so many other projects that I've been a part of in the past.
Mr. Samuels?
And it's a dual strategy. The Holman Decree resulted in $650,000 house being built a stone's throw away from Section 8 housing. People bought those properties, and the community is one of the safest in the city, with 900 families. And so it can be done. That's why I live where I live, because I believe that in my heart it can be done. That's why we do need those 100 green homes. Sorry, Jackie. In North Minneapolis to get those energetic, young, environmental-minded young people to move into North Minneapolis and create the kind of socioeconomic diversity we need, and not be afraid of the word gentrification, because everybody has to share the responsibility for taking affordable housing in our community. Every community should. But it needs real leadership. You need a mayor who can communicate those values. Values matter. Otherwise, people are going to scream, "Not in my backyard." But when you have a mayor who can lead the conversation about equity and fairness, people jump in line and want to help.
Mr. Andrew.
I think we're all singing off the same sheet of music on this one. Affordable housing needs to be evenly, fairly, equitably dispersed everywhere in the city, and we need to do it in the same way we dealt with some of the social service programs that I dealt with on the county board when we had treatment programs in neighborhoods like the Whittier neighborhood and other neighborhoods where you literally couldn't go 150 feet without running into another treatment program. We embarked on a strategy to have a fairer distribution of community-based treatment homes spread not only throughout the city but throughout the county. We were very successful doing that. We're going to do the exact same thing with affordable housing. It needs to be everywhere. I agree with Betsy, since we live in the same neighborhood. Everybody should share in that. And I think we're all in accordance on that.
Ms. Cherryhomes.
Well, the Holman Consent Decree and the what's known as Heritage Park now was a part of my life from the day I walked into City Hall till the day I left. Nobody understands that situation better than me. Nobody made the difficult decisions that I made to move forward to make sure that North Minneapolis was a home to a wide variety of people in a mixed income housing environment. That being said, it's not that easy in other neighborhoods, and frankly, it's not a onesie-twosie here and there. It's got to be a concerted, strategic effort, and it's got to be conversations with neighborhoods. Neighborhoods need to understand that when we talk about workforce housing, we're not talking about strange people. We're talking about people's sons and daughters who are having their first job. We were all there in workforce housing or affordable housing at some point in our life. We need to have communities understand that it's not people who are coming in, it's their own people that need housing. That conversation is not happening, that leadership is not happening, that strategic outreach to neighborhoods is not happening. People don't understand what affordable housing is. As the mayor of Minneapolis, I would lead that conversation with authenticity because I've done it.
The next question is for Mr. Samuels and will be asked by Ms. Snowden.
I'd like to dig in a little deeper on the property tax issue. Property taxes have increased by almost 50% during the Rybak administration. Will you commit to not raising Minneapolis property taxes as mayor?
Well, read my lips. Those are probably the three most deadly words a politician can say. And so I won't say them. But I will make a commitment that as mayor, I will make every effort to make sure that we do not add to the burden of taxes on the people of our community. There are a lot of professional people, teachers and the like, who have seen their taxes doubled over the last few years. And they're just hanging on by a fingernail to their properties. And they're feeling the same kinds of anxieties that poor people feel who are hanging on by their fingernails. So we have to begin to develop a sensitivity around that the pain is now at a 10. And we can't pile on anymore. And we have to make a commitment to draw a line under all circumstances without compromising safety and the basic functioning of our city. We have to, this is as far as I see we can go. Otherwise, the pitchforks are going to come out and people are going to march on City Hall. It almost happened the last time. Now, let me say, I admire Mayor Rybak for making the difficult decisions that were necessary to compensate for the unfairness from the state. But we've topped out. And you have my commitment that I will hold the line as much as humanly possible.
Ms. Cherryhomes?
I am not the least bit interested in raising property taxes. It's not an option for me. I think we need to look at other things. I see the reality of property taxes from the vantage point of the young families who are moving into my neighborhood and are taking over houses that were vacant. I see property taxes from the vantage point of my mother, who is 86, living in her house still in South Minneapolis that she's lived in for the last 59 years. I see what happens with property taxes. When you're in government, you can do one of four things. You can cut services, you can raise taxes, you can redesign your service delivery, or you can increase your tax base. I'm not interested in raising taxes. I'm not interested in cutting services. What I am good at doing and what I know how to do, having done it before, is redesigning service delivery and increasing the tax base. You have to do one of those four things, or a couple of those four things, and I'm interested in redesigning service delivery to start off with. I think we need to look at our budget. We need to look at where there are opportunities. When I was in office before, what we did is we had to cut a number of employees from our workforce. And that was a tough thing to do. But rather than cut those employees, what we did is we created a jobs bank under the leadership of Kathleen O'Brien, our city coordinator at that point, and we retrained those people for jobs. We saved the unemployment costs. We saved the heartache of people losing their jobs. We found jobs for those people, and that was a redesign of government. That's one of the things that I will do. Secondly, we're going to build the tax base. You have to have a broader tax base and more people paying taxes. So I'm interested in building the tax base.
Ms. Hodges?
In recent years, no one has been more committed to alleviating our property tax burden than I have. I spent 6 years of my life advocating for pension reform, which has made me very unpopular at cocktail parties because it's kind of boring. But it's not boring when you get to end up saying at the end of it all, we saved you a $20 million property tax levy increase in 2012. You didn't have to write a $20 million check because we reformed pensions. I have been a staunch advocate for local government aid at the state level, both in my time as Intergovernmental Relations Chair, my first time in charge of our sort of state relationship, and as President of the League of Minnesota Cities right now. Because the two biggest pressures on the property taxes in Minneapolis used to be pensions and still are local government aid cuts. That's the money that we have to do what we need to do. In addition, I've worked on the city's wellness program, which has saved millions of dollars in our health costs. I helped found the wellness committee that has made that possible. And I created the property tax stability account a couple years ago. A place that we could put one-time dollars that we could use in the future to buy down our property tax levy if we needed to. And as Councilmember Schiff mentioned earlier, yesterday we put $7 million into it, which is the equivalent of a 2.5% property tax reduction. No one has done more work in this area than I have, and no one will pay more attention to it than I will as mayor.
Mr. Andrew?
Good words from all of the council members. Here's the reality. The city has primarily taken the first two draconian choices of the four that Jackie mentioned. They have cut programs. They have raised property taxes. The city is behind on innovation. It is behind on service redesign. These problems have festered for a long time. I do not hold the mayor or the city council accountable for the pressures on the property tax. Every major city in the country has gone through it. However, other cities in the country are employing more innovative ways to design themselves out of these problems. In Minneapolis today, we have 28,000 fewer jobs than we had in 2001. 28,000 fewer jobs. We have not articulated a cogent, rational, comprehensive strategy to recapture those jobs. My administration will focus on these things. Number one, job creation, developing a collaborative strategy to do that. Number two, economic development, intense, focused economic development. And number three, a long-term strategy for building the population of our city.
Mr. Schiff.
When I came to office 12 years ago with Mayor Rybak, we had just lost our AAA bond rating because of years of projects that were giveaways to big developers that saddled us with debt from budgets that were not balanced, and from an inability to look at the regressive nature of property taxes and how they force homeowners from Linden Hills to move to the burbs, or homeowners in Phillips to move into an apartment building and give up on the dream of home ownership. We need to create a local sustainable economy, and that includes making it easier for small businesses. Let's stop the large subsidies to retail developers, the failed Block Es, the Viking stadiums. Let's focus on small scale, small grain, local economic development so that small business owners succeed. They're the ones creating jobs and wealth mostly in our community. And I'm so proud in this campaign on day one when I kicked it off to be endorsed by over 100 small locally owned business owners. Number two, we do have to build our population, and it's coming. The senior population will double in the next 20 years, and our housing stock doesn't reflect that changing demographic. So we're in the middle of a housing boom. Just one of the 3 towers that's going under construction right now in downtown Minneapolis will provide $3.5 to $5 million in property taxes the day that it opens. That is our future, making sure that seniors can age in place, making sure that young families who move to Minneapolis have a place to live in. We can diversify our housing stock and build our tax base at the same time.
As long as I've been following elections and commenting on them, one of the things you can count on is election time comes up and you hear a lot of discussion about cutting government waste, redesigning government, and it's something you can kind of count on coming up. And I'd like to dig in and get your specific views about a set of reforms that we've seen discussed at the Capitol and in the counties and in the cities, which is redesigning the so-called backroom operations, human resources, information technology, finance, other kinds of services. Can you give us some specific, concrete, doable actions that you would pursue to redesign government, to cut this government waste we keep hearing about? Concrete, specific. Mr. Samuels.
When I was elected to City Hall, I came in an off year, so I got a chance to make a speech, which new council members don't usually get to. And in that speech, I encouraged the city to adopt what we called then City Stat, which was used in Baltimore. And eventually we did adopt that system. We call it Results Minneapolis, where we measure everything. We measure how long it takes to, for a dispatcher or an agent to take a call at the city from the 311. We measure how long it takes for them to get that information to the appropriate department, for that department to dispatch a solution to fill the pothole, or for police to arrive on the scene, how long they were on the scene, how long the job took. We measure everything. That's why we've been able to cut our staff by about 10% and still improve efficiencies. Because we're measuring everything and we're tweaking every process. We've been doing that, really. And what I'm planning to do, pledge to do as mayor, is to continue the rigor of the Results Minneapolis effort, and we can tweak and tweak and tweak and get better and better and leaner and stronger as a city. That is my commitment, and I'll commit to introducing that concept to our partner governmental organizations.
Ms. Cherryhomes?
Well, I think when you're talking about redesigning service, you need to first of all determine if the service is necessary. Then you need to determine if it's better delivered by another entity. Then you have to challenge the departments to earn their budget increases with cost savings. And finally, I think it would be helpful if we had a commission that was similar to what former Mayor Fraser did some years ago, where you bring in some people from the private sector to take a look at government operations and see what's working and see what's not working. I believe at the time that he did that, there were about 200 things that were suggested as ways of doing things better. And I think we should go back and look at doing that again. I'm not a big person on commissions, but I think sometimes bringing in people from the outside to look at what you're doing is really, really helpful. I think one of the first places we can start, and I'll agree with my friend Councilmember Schiff, is with regulatory services and people who work with small businesses. Having worked with small businesses in this city, it's an absolute nightmare to try and locate your business in the city of Minneapolis. An absolute nightmare. That's the first place I would start. Then I would look at cooperative purchasing agreements with other agencies. I think those are places that we can start.
Ms. Hodges?
When you think about redesigning services in sort of the back of City Hall, when you think about our HR services or our city attorney services, part of what has needed to happen in the city of Minneapolis and that we're working on is making sure that they are communicating with each other and sharing information. We have a few projects in place that are doing that. Most recently, we were a first-of-a-kind city for IBM, putting together an operations platform where all the different data sets in the city of Minneapolis can talk to one another to create a lot of efficiencies. So if one part of the enterprise is giving a block party permit, the police department finds out, or the fire department finds out, so they know that they may have to reroute their cars and their trucks. It's that sort of internal communication that can create efficiencies at the city. We have also done that in our finance department with our back room. That's where we need to look, is how can you get the various pieces of the city talking to each other. And if we get another minute, I'll talk about the park board.
Mr. Andrew.
I think when we talk about the city and the innards of city government, when you look at one thing, which is the decentralization that currently exists among power bases within City Hall, it's one place we need to look for better coordination, better communication, and maybe even consolidation. Today, you got the city coordinator, you got the budget director, you got the chief of staff to the mayor, you got the police chief. Everybody has a fiefdom. And it's really hard for all of those pieces to be knit together in a way that results in great efficiency. There are arguments for doing it the way it's been done. But I think they get trumped by the need to save money and cut costs. So first of all, we're going to go after the regulatory piece. It's true the small business community has been complaining for years about problems dealing with regulatory in Minneapolis. It's also true we need to look at the administrative costs in the city. We have a lot of positions, direct service positions that got cut, and a lot of administrative positions that got cut, but probably not enough.
Mr. Schiff.
Did you know you could get a job in the city of Minneapolis as a wine inspector? Your job is to go to a wine bar, and if a plate of bread doesn't hit the table before that glass of wine, business gets a $200 citation. We need to comprehensively look through our liquor codes, look through our regulatory codes, and work to make sure that we have the rules on the books that make sense. There's a lot of activity going on of multiple employees regulating one business, and the business owner gets 5 different answers. So a comprehensive rewrite of our city regulatory code in the first 6 months in office is number one. Number two, the HR, the information technology, partnering with the park board and the school board is essential. There's a lot of cost savings. I've been chair of the city's information technology committee for the last 2 years. We have missed vital opportunities. The good thing is, with technology, there's always another opportunity around the corner. We have a 911 center that is the best in the state, but we have too many 911 centers throughout the metropolitan area. You think of a city like New York, 2 911 call centers for the entire city of New York. We have over a dozen in the metro area alone. We need a mayor who will build relationships with suburban leaders to continue to consolidate the kind of services that every taxpayer needs, but every taxpayer doesn't need to pay 5 times to get.
I want to welcome Tony Damiano for the last pair of questions. Tony.
Despite tighter controls in the wake of the Metro Gang Strike Force scandal, investigations are still uncovering misconduct among the remaining task forces, including the Anoka-Hennepin County Narcotics and Violent Crime Task Force. What would you do to improve the accountability of these task forces and ensure public trust in our law enforcement officials?
Mr. Andrew.
I think the first thing I'm going to do is spend a lot of time with Chief R.T, who shares my values for how the criminal justice and policing ought to be done in this community. Number one, we will have a commitment to fairness. Number two, we will have a commitment to humanity. Number three, we will have a commitment to discipline. And number four, we will have a commitment to collaboration. The Strike Task Force and other crime-fighting entities in the city need to be more transparent, and they need to look beyond the traditional sanctions and processes and procedures that have been discussed historically. One thing I'm personally interested in doing is looking at tougher sanctions for repeat offenders in our community. Not only are they dangerous and toxic to the people, to the city of Minneapolis, but they are a huge money drain. And I do think an evaluation of what happens with perpetrators who repeatedly don't get the message and who repeatedly go out and commit crimes, I think a reclassification of some of those crimes is appropriate. But I think job number one is going to be for me to come in. I'll come in with fresh eyes. I've been out of public life for over a decade, and I will have the opportunity with fresh eyes to come in, sit down with the chief, and using the guiding principles that I just expressed, devise strategies that will hopefully work for the city.
Ms. Hodges?
One of the things I fought hardest for is to make sure we have a strong and active civil rights department, because that's one of the places where people can go to make their complaints when they have problems with our officers or they have questions about those ethics. I was on the work group to help reform the Civilian Review Authority. Once that was no longer viable, I am still looking to make sure we have even better civilian oversight than we have now. And I've often asked the question, or I've often made the statement, that if you asked our city attorney's office, if you asked our civil rights department, and if you asked our internal affairs unit and the police department, which of our officers, it's a small number of them, which of our officers should be invited to pursue a different career, they would all come up with the same list. And it's those officers who are creating problems in the city of Minneapolis and making the rest of the police force look bad and create challenges with relationships to the community. Having these officers in place, having these struggles around the integrity of the police department, it damages public safety, because the residents of Minneapolis don't feel safe then talking to a police officer when information needs to be communicated. This is a crucial issue for the city. Chief Harteau, I have supported without reservation. I have had questions about prior chiefs, and that has been a matter of public scrutiny and debate. But Chief Harteau, I have absolute confidence in that she knows how to work with the culture within the department, and she values and understands that the relationship with the community is equally as vital.
Ms. Cherryhomes?
I came into office originally running sort of, I would say, sort of against some of the police officers and some of their practices in the community that I was living in and that I represented. I was critical of the police department. There were plenty of anecdotal incidents that I'd heard about in the community about police not doing their job in an appropriate way, and I came in a pretty critical fashion. I soon learned that the police needed to be my partner, and I needed to be their partner. I went to roll calls regularly, and I said, quite frankly, if you do your job well and within the letter of the law, you will have my support 120, 150%. And over the 12 years that I was in office, we formed a very, very, very strong bond and a very strong partnership, and I have the greatest respect for the work that they do in protecting our community. I was active in establishing the Civilian Review Authority when it was a meaningful and legitimate body. And I believe today that we still need a Civilian Review Authority that is a meaningful and legitimate body. That was a difficult thing to do. That was a difficult vote to take. It was difficult to sit in the council chambers with police officers there protesting us doing that. But we did it, and I took the lead in doing that, and I was proud of that work. I believe we need to be transparent. I believe we need to look at these task forces, and I believe we need to demand accountability from our police. I think that we are on the right track with that. I also believe, as I would say with Mark Andrew there, that I support strong prosecution of people. I look at public safety as involving policing, prevention, and prosecution. All three need to be working. All three need to be working together in concert with each other.
Mr. Schiff.
Number one, we need to protect human rights. I voted to protect human rights when I voted against the elimination of our Civilian Review Board, and I believe the next mayor of Minneapolis has to instill accountability again back into that process to make sure that citizens have an opportunity to feel that they are heard when they have a complaint about local law enforcement. And number two, I voted against the weakening of our Civil Rights Department. When a proposal was made to lay off civil rights investigators, I cast the deciding vote to make sure that we protect our legacy as a city that values civil rights. The question was about intergovernmental accountability with these task forces across the metro area. We have several task forces that we participate in, task forces that are designed to stop sex slavery, task forces to stop the trafficking of guns, task forces to stop a variety of crimes in our metro area. But we pull out of the task forces too late when we notice that things are going awry, as we did with the gang task force. As mayor, I would make sure there's tighter scrutiny before we ever agree to give a Minneapolis police officer to an intergovernmental agency to make sure that we don't lose accountability over that officer. We cannot take the hardworking men and women of the Minneapolis Police Department and hand them off to a sheriff in a different county, hand them off to someone at a federal level and say, we don't know what they're working on anymore, and we don't know what they're doing. Lastly, I think we need a mayor who will stand up for the reform of outdated drug laws that has resulted in prison overpopulation in this country. I will be a mayor who works with mayors across this country for reasonable solutions, not tougher penalties on people who are mentally ill and people who abuse drugs. We need a mayor who will fight for common sense reform of our laws so that we are not warehousing the next generation.
Mr. Samuels.
As chair of the Public Safety Department and the mayor's partner in the public safety, leadership of public safety, I was in on the earliest conversations about the succession of Chief Dolan and the appointment of Chief Hartel. So I can take some responsibility or credit for that, because I think she represents the best of a new kind of policing. Community policing, high integrity, high ethics, with a focus on our goal of service and education around the ethics of our police force. I believe in justice. I just hate to see injustice done and disorder, whether it be a guy peeing on the side of a building or someone in the corner office just being selfish and destructive. I think corrupt cop is a stain on the city, and we deal with it from time to time. We had a phenomenon in the community recently around don't snitch. People weren't talking to the police because their trust had been eroded and because the gangs had created this ethic to scare people. But as the community became more trusting, that went away. I think the same thing can happen in the police force. If we have the kind of leadership that creates trust, the professional class of people working and interacting with the public, we can recreate trust in the police department and make sure that police themselves and report inconsistencies knowing that they will be protected. And that's the kind of leadership that I will bring as of the public safety function of our city.
Minneapolis Police Department recently reported an increase in serious crimes in 2012, for the third consecutive year. Should residents of Minneapolis feel safe regarding themselves and their property? Mr. Andrew.
Well, serious crimes as well as crimes that aren't that serious. Residents should feel safe. We're still a pretty safe community. The perception is, I think, far more damaging than the reality in some cases. Burglaries, home burglaries, only about a third of those, somewhere around a third of those, are apprehensions. And so there's a lot of mistrust in a lot of neighborhoods, some of the really stable neighborhoods that enjoy low crime rates, with the perception that they are no longer safe. So the issue of public safety as a reality and as a perception has to be addressed in tandem. We have to take more proactive measures to make sure the public knows what's going on, public knowledge, public education, involvement with neighborhoods and communities. There's a little bit of a physician heal thyself element in all of this because communities need to be proactive as well. But I think Minneapolitans have a reason to still feel relatively secure and believe that their futures will continue to be.
Ms. Hodges?
Minneapolis is a safe city for most people. Crimes that are committed differentially depending on what community you live in and depending on what cohort you are with. And so one of the key things we need to do around crime in the city of Minneapolis is continue to work to unify the city, continue to work to reduce divisions in the city, continue to create opportunity for everyone in the city, to place that opportunity where it's needed. That's one of the primary things we can do in the city of Minneapolis regarding crime and safety. I represent a community with one of the lowest crime rates in the entire city. It's important that people get a minimum level, these services that they need. That's why I have supported the crime prevention specialists in every budget. Those are civilians who are liaisons from the community to the police department who do a really great job of explaining what's happening, and that's the primary public safety service that folks in my part of town get.
Ms. Cherryhomes?
Well, whenever a crime happens to you, it makes you unsafe, and it's not good. I mean, I don't care if it's a small crime or it's a big crime. It's a crime, and it's the most important thing that's happening in your life at that point in time. And we need to be prepared to address that. We can't minimize that because it's a smaller crime than a so-called bigger crime. You know, I live in a neighborhood and have represented a neighborhood where crime is an issue. I would venture to guess that nobody else on this panel has been through a middle of the morning, late night burglary, huddled with their child in a closet, waiting for the police to come. No one else has had a murder happen on their block. No one else has had to explain to their daughter why someone's running down the street with a gun in front of their house. Crime is real, and it affects all of us. And maybe it affects one neighborhood more than the other, but it affects all of it. It still appears in the newspaper. It still is the perception that the whole rest of the city sees. We need to be aggressive about it. We need to have all city departments look at everything through the lens of safety. We need to collaborate with all our departments. The major work of the mayor of this city, is to ensure that our city is safe. If we don't, people will vote with their feet. We need to ensure that our city is safe.
Mr. Schiff.
Public safety is our number one priority. We must make sure that every neighborhood makes progress in the fight against crime. We have to make sure that we are adequately staffing and training our police and our firefighters. I'm so proud to be endorsed by the Minneapolis Firefighters Local 82 in my campaign because I know that there is a surge of retirements coming to the police and the fire department. Some 40% will be eligible in the next decade. To maintain that, we must invest and make sure that we are training, recruiting, and funding the hiring of new officers to make sure that our police force and our fire department are fully funded. But nothing stops a bullet like a job. We have to keep the focus on fighting poverty in our communities. We have to keep the focus on funding efforts that save our kids from multi-generational poverty that leads to gangs and crimes. An economic development focus, a focus in working with children to get them out of situations at the first time of trouble is got to be a crucial focus of my public safety strategy.
Mr. Samuels.
I'm almost unable to contain myself when I consider the conditions that some of our community members and children live in. And I'll just say to Jackie, I can match you story for story. My life has been threatened about 5 times. I've been taken to court because of my stance on public safety issues, because I can't stand it to think that some of our neighbors are unsafe. I can't take it. This is America, where you're supposed to have a right to liberty and life and the pursuit of happiness. And it's supposed to flow like a river. And our children shouldn't be afraid to stand at the bus stop, because we have in our city 45% of the state's sex offenders in the city of Minneapolis. 5 million people in the state, $380,000 in our city, and we have 45%, and some neighborhoods have half of that total. It's unjust. And we're going to make, as mayor of this city, I make you a promise. You can hold me accountable, because we're going to arrest this brute and strangle it. The brute of violence and our injustice must be stopped. Our citizens must be safe.
Mr. Damiano, last question.
A November 2012 MinnPost article stated that Minneapolis jobs grew by only 0.3% above the national average in the past 2 years, and that most of these jobs were in low-paying sectors. Please identify an initiative that you would propose to bring more high-paying jobs to Minneapolis.
Mr. Schiff.
First thing I would do is simplify the regulatory environment so that small businesses can grow and help create jobs. Second thing I would do is take the spending we already are doing in our budget and attach those jobs to city residents. $10 million in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. But how many residents of Minneapolis are getting those construction jobs? We need strong contract requirements to make sure we are taking people from our job training programs and plugging them into city job sites. 50% of graduates of Minneapolis job training programs are unemployed 6 months after the program is over. We have to do better to make sure that we are training our workforce to get the jobs that are growing. Our 2 highest growing sectors is high tech and also the hospital and healthcare industry. We have to focus to make sure that high-tech jobs are coming to Minneapolis by fostering innovative places for people to share ideas. A lot of our job training programs were designed some 20, 30 years ago. This is a new economy. This is a new day. We need to work with the business sector to look at how we spend our money to creating jobs. It's not good enough to write a blank check to somebody who's building a mall or someone building a stadium. That is an inefficient way to create jobs, and it violates our values. We have to start from the grassroots. We have to train our workers, and we have to bring people to Minneapolis knowing that when they get here, there'll be a job waiting.
Ms. Cherryhomes.
Jobs are indeed one of the highest priorities for our city, and one of the things I've been talking the most about. And I actually have some experience in doing job creation. First of all, we need to be strategic. We need to understand what jobs are available out there, and then we need to ensure that people are trained for those jobs. One of the things that I'm working on right now with Summit Academy is identifying in the building and construction trades what people are retiring. What are those trades where there's going to be significant retirements, and how do we train people for those jobs so that there's a pipeline of people coming into those jobs. There's also a great project going on with Dunwoody, where they're training people for jobs of the future. So we have to be working by identifying the jobs, and we have to be identifying the people who are training for those jobs, so we ensure that we have a match-up between those two. There's also some work going on with the Itasca group, where they're looking at how do you match up college graduates and young people who are graduating from school with the jobs that are going to become available. We have to be intentional. We have to be strategic, and we can't leave it to happenstance. Personally, I think we need to hire someone at the city. I don't know if they're in CPED or where, but will be a person who is charged with creating jobs, looking for jobs. I don't know if you want to call it a job czar or something like that, but a person whose responsibility it is to work with the business community, the nonprofit community, the job creation community, the training community, and bring everybody together and convene them on a regular basis so we know what jobs are available, what people are looking for work, and so Minneapolis becomes the place that people think about locating their jobs.
Thank you. Mr. Andrew.
A number of sectors that I would really like to concentrate on. From the public side of the equation, rapid escalation of development of transit is going to create a lot of jobs and for a long time, and that in turn will foster the immediate establishment of businesses along that corridor, which will create livable jobs. More work with other big employers, healthcare for sure, technology, retail, entertainment industries, 4 other areas where I think there's a lot of room for growth. The stadium. The stadium will generate several thousand high-paying jobs. So we can either be against subsidizing a billionaire, or we can make a stadium work for several thousand people in our community. Next strategy, public-private relationships, getting private industry to buy in to doing a better job with job training programs that match up seamlessly to the available employment in our community. Those are the strategies we ought to be undertaking. We need to be aggressive about it, but we can't create jobs in a vacuum. We have to build. We have to create economic development opportunities. And with those economic development opportunities come jobs. Job number 1 for us, economic development to create employment. It will happen quickly.
Mr. Samuels.
Thank you. Well, I want to be the job czar. I want to be the job czar. I want to talk to our public schools about the kind of jobs that are coming down the line and get prepared for them. The federal government just revealed that they want to find 40,000 people to fill jobs for tech security against terrorism, and there are 11,000 people available. We're not preparing our people for the jobs that are coming nationally. We're not doing it locally. We must put the emphasis right from K through 12. And then the skills jobs. We have our tsunami of retirement coming with all the baby boomer tradespeople. And we have no trade high school. We need a trade high school. And we need trade programs in our high schools so our young people can be prepared to step into those jobs. In addition, I want to build a stadium. We are going to get thousands of jobs for our people in the spending of that $1 billion and the $100 million on the Target Center to rehab that. That's jobs. I can't say enough, folks. Jobs, 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 and jobs will never come in a perfect container. Jobs will never come in a perfect container. And we're going to build green jobs. We're going to build 100 green homes in North Minneapolis, and the folks from Summit Academy are going to build them with new skills and new technologies. We need to continue that work and make sure we have a job force that matches the opportunities that are coming down the road.
Ms. Hodges.
The economy's opening up. People are going to be looking to invest. Minneapolis has weathered the Great Recession better than almost any city in the country, and we are poised to take advantage of this moment. People are already starting to invest in Minneapolis sooner than they are in other cities. And what brings people to investment, whether they're investing in a home, a small business, or coming here for a job? There's a few key factors. One of them is transit and transportation. Making sure that the workforce has access to the jobs that we create here in the city of Minneapolis. Transit and transportation is crucial. It also, those transit lines bring people. People want to live along them. They want to be free from cars, or they don't have one, or they don't have access to one, but they can ride a train. They can ride a streetcar. And following those people will be investment in small businesses, grocery stores, hardware stores, to serve the people who are now living along those lines. So transportation is key for creating job growth. People also look for the workforce. That's crucial. One of the reasons that Minneapolis does so well across the country is because we have a highly educated workforce. We need to do better. There is a sector of our future workforce that is languishing. Those inequalities are unacceptable on the face of them, but also not smart in terms of our future job growth. And the final things folks look for is livability. That's where our arts culture comes in. That's where our green space comes in. That's where the ability for recreation comes in. And we have that, and we need to elevate that, both as something that draws people here, but also as drivers of our economy and job creators.
We've come to that moment. Final statements. Mr. Schiff.
I get it. I have the values that I was raised with, and I've been a consistent progressive voice on the Minneapolis City Council. I understand the challenges of middle-class families struggling to get by and those who are struggling to enter the middle class. I get things done. I've been a leader passing legislation on the Minneapolis City Council, making life easier for the people who live here, making it easier to create jobs for small businesses. As Mayor of Minneapolis, I will uphold those values, and I will not sell Minneapolis out. Staying the course means more people get left behind. Staying the course means that we continue to forget the gaps that are growing in our neighborhoods, and I want to make sure in this city, the most progressive city in America, that every neighborhood is making progress. Please join my campaign. Let's make neighborhoods stronger. Let's make life better for the people who live here.
Mr. Samuels.
Thank you. I know this is a forum and we're supposed to talk. So really we can say anything we want. But when it comes down to the rubber hitting the road, who's going to be the person who's going to stand and be a leader in our city? Someone who has a vision, a clear vision for what this country said it would be. A fair and just society where each one has an equal opportunity to become all they can be. That's what I found in my own destiny. And I want to make that American dream a reality for every child and everybody and every citizen in our country, in our city. That is leadership. I've walked into a tough community and provided leadership, come on the council, and for 7 years in a row we had double-digit reduction in crime. Because I was willing to make tough decisions. I get some tough customers. Invisible and in secret to do the right thing. That's the kind of mayor Minneapolis needs. That's the kind of mayor I will be. And we can become the safest city in the United States of America. I'll say that one. Thank you.
Ms. Hodges.
Well, this has been a great conversation today. It's a forum, it's kind of a debate, but it's also been a conversation with people who care a great deal about the city. And this conversation has not been unlike the conversations I've been having with folks all across Minneapolis in the last over decade. That people do want prosperity in the city of Minneapolis. That the prosperity we have is not enough. We need to bring jobs, we need to bring opportunity, and we need to bring those jobs and opportunity to everybody in the city. People want unification. We know there are divisions in our community that are keeping us from being the best city that we can be. And that if we are going to become the greatest city of the 21st century, we are going to need to address those divisions head on. We're going to need to get all our ships sailing in the same direction to make sure that we are creating opportunities and bringing our community together, to move forward together, to get our ships sailing in the same direction. And folks want a city that works. They want to know that your tax dollars are being used well and wisely. Those are three things I have experience in: the relationships I've built to make that happen, and the tough fights I've taken off to make it all true.
Ms. Cherryhomes.
Thank you for having us here today. And I think you've heard that we all agree our city should be safe, green, and well managed. This has been a conversation today, but frankly, it's more been a conversation among us. The important conversation is the conversation we have with you. And that conversation will happen over the course of the next 7 months. Seems like a long time, but it's going to go quickly. And your choice will be based on who is best able to listen to our citizens, to bring us together, and to lead forward with bold, decisive leadership based on a unified vision for our future. The next mayor of Minneapolis must be prepared to tackle the difficult issues of education, unemployment, and safety while continuing to build a strong economy. The next mayor must have the vision, the strength, and the ability to bring us together. I am that person. I've worked in the neighborhoods throughout our city, both north and south. I've dealt with some of the most challenging issues facing us: unemployment, safety, and housing. I've run a small business, and I've run the city's government. I work hard, I'm passionate, I'm tenacious, and I have a good track record. These skills enable me to hit the ground running, making me a strong leader. I'm a grassroots person, and I'm running a grassroots campaign. The Cherryhomes team is a big tent with room in it for everyone. We ask you to join us. Come join Teams Cherryhomes, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Mr. Andrew.
Everybody at this table enjoys talents and experiences that would help make the city a better place to live. What the voters are going to have to figure out is who is the best person to occupy that amazing platform, which is the modern mayor of a major American city. The skill sets required for that are very customized. The mayor has to be inspirational. The mayor has to know how to put a best foot forward on behalf of the community. The mayor needs to know how to collaborate in a way that is uber collaboration, because the solutions to the problems that we are plagued with today aren't going to be solved by utilizing the same tools we've used up until now. I am a bold, action-oriented, transparent, honest, passionate, hard-working guy, and I love this town. And I'm going to work hard day and night on behalf of the city if you make me your choice for mayor. Thanks.
Couple last comments. Just a heads up, if you enjoyed this program, there's some extraordinary things coming up. We're going to have 2 forums on the budget being debated at the legislature. The first one, 9 a.m. on the 22nd with Bach and Thiessen. On the 30th, 9 a.m., it's going to be with minority leaders Hahn and Doubt. Those will look to be terrific. April 23rd at noon, we have an extraordinary program with New York Times reporter Scott Shane, Vice President Mondale, talking about national security issues and the Constitution. On May 2nd, we have Congressman Waltz coming in to talk about drone policy and how Congress should be getting involved in that. A couple thank yous. I want to thank our Dean Schwartz for his continuing support in a lot of what we do here. Ed Getz is a great colleague and quite involved in urban policy and was a terrific advisor. What can I say about our students? Did they deliver or what, huh?